blueprints that you can apply from one to the other, but you can definitely share learnings about digital transformation, how to drive change, because that's so core to our investment thesis and something we always want to do. And I've seen that come in, really useful. And a lot of times people are so heads down trying to execute on their role that they forget to look left and right. And I think that's where Catalyst really can come in to help galvanize and tie the knowledge together and spark the creativity in that sense.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas. We are the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to empowering Catalyst to create bold, powerful change in the world.
This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, where we speak with Catalyst executives about ways to successfully lead transformation in large organizations.
Today, I'm very excited to have time with my friend Juliane Stephan. Juliane is the operating partner at BayPine, where she leads value creation strategies focused on operational excellence and digital transformation. With a track record in private equity and consulting, she has driven EBITDA growth and scaled businesses across healthcare, manufacturing, distribution, and tech sectors globally. Previously, she was a principal at Incline Equity Partners and held leadership roles at Bain & Company and PwC Strategy. Originally from Germany, Juliane holds a BA from Zeppelin University and a master's in international management from the Vienna University of Economics and Business. Welcome.
Thanks so much, and glad to be here with you.
So happy to be here. I was just saying, I'm excited to hear this version of your story. So why don't we dive in? I'd love to hear more about your catalytic journey, maybe sharing a few career highlights that you're proud of that help us see your catalytic nature.
Yeah, happy to. I think a common theme really throughout my career has been that I always seeked out roles where transformation is really at the core. So you can see that both with the consulting roles as well as in the private equity role. My job title per definition gives me the license to transform, which I think is something that resonated, really well with what I want to do and where I see my strengths. In addition to that, I also get a lot of passion from helping to start things. So I've been a lot of times in the situations where I build new teams or new solutions or help build new companies and scale them. So that's kind of a common thread that I've followed throughout my career. Maybe just to give you a few examples. So one was at PwC when we created the integrated solution. So PwC as a company tried to move away from the bill by the hour, purely people-based model, and shift more towards solution sale and also technology sale and recurring revenue models. And when the firm initiative came up, one of my partners I work with and myself, we saw an opportunity to push for one of our topics to become part of this effort. And we started to create a digital operations integrated solution. And I was co-leading the smart factory piece of it and was in that role really responsible for combining the whole knowledge from PwC in this area from different teams across different global zones and countries, and really pull that together into one perspective, how we can help clients both with strategy, but then also with the execution, the change management, the technology implementation. And we also build solutions that can serve as an accelerator. And at the end, what was super rewarding, I had the chance to implement that at some of our customers, and they still got value from those solutions many years after we left the project, which was great because a lot of time in consulting, your recommendations disappear in a drawer and never come back. So that was really a great opportunity to see how a very nascent idea of building this team came full circle to really implementing a solution, taking clients through a smart factory transformation and having them see value from it.
It's an amazing example, and I hope that other people who might not be Catalyst are understanding the value that Catalyst can bring to the organization. It's like the connecting the dots, finding all of the industry knowledge, thinking about new business models, thinking about like a full life cycle. I think it's amazing. I have a question though. Often the job descriptions aren't as clear about like, hey, here's an opportunity to come in and license to transform, as you described it, right? I mean, obviously there are some transformation roles. I don't see that in all of your roles. So like, how did you find those roles? Or do you have advice for people who are like, yeah, I want to go in and start things and have license to transform?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of times the roles I ended up with or that I found attractive had a bit of ambiguity. So they weren't super well defined. The companies maybe didn't know themselves exactly what they need. So already in the interview and in the initial collaborations and discussions, I could sense that there is an opportunity to help shape and form, the role, but also basically the focus areas. And I think that really drew me or like made me decide from one opportunity to another. And then I think in the bigger organizations like PwC and Bain, there are actually quite many opportunities to forge your career in these, contexts. And I think if you're a catalyst, you're naturally getting drawn to finding these opportunities, rallying support around them, and trying to drive change. And if you build a good business case around it and you get good rapport and support from leadership, you very often I've experienced that you get the opportunity to try out and get the support you need to start with these initiatives. So I feel it's a bit of seeking like the opportunities where there might be a good opportunity for transformation or the openness to it. And then also inside just not being shy to create your own path and steering a little bit away from the standard role. So.
Spot on. And I love that you connected that to the business plan. Like for Catalyst, it's like it has to be, especially once you're inside, it has to be demonstrable value. Have you ever then sort of created your own job description in either path, from outside in or internally?
Well, I feel like in a lot of the last roles, I was one of the very early employees in a new team. So per definition, we were just figuring it out as we are, forming the team and building out the organization. And I guess one thing that's been serving me, but also sometimes feels a bit maybe too loose for me personally. I have a pretty interdisciplinary, cross-functional background, so I'm fairly flexible and fungible. So, very often I'm also playing the roles where there's a gap in the team and where it's needed, which I think has been, a great career accelerator. But sometimes it also feels for me like, is there an opportunity to better define, my lane and really develop more expertise? Because I think we'll probably come to that later, but as a catalyst, you're also very often tempted to be very thin spread, right? And that's sometimes how I feel. And the coaching also with Tracy and the Catalyst Trust has been helping me to, be more aware of that and really think through how can I not be too thin spread, not take on too many commitments, but actually pick the areas that have most impact and double down on those. But I guess that's a bit of a work in progress.
It always is. And, it's one of the values, like when we do catalyst programs in organizations, often people assume, and I understand why, that a catalyst needs to have the domain expertise to be able to drive change, in that swim lane, if you will. And really what I hear from you, which has been my experience and what the research shows, is we're kind of Swiss Army knives, where it's like, yeah, we can go in and activate things. We don't always need the domain expertise. So for someone listening, like, how would you articulate, and this pivots sort of into, connecting with, what being a catalyst executive means to you, but how would you articulate that value to, someone listening about what Catalyst can bring in that generalist perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely do want some domain expertise. So, you can't I think there's definitely skill set that is independent of that, which is more like rallying the change, driving the vision and that piece of it. But I think you really get powerful if you also combine it with sufficient domain expertise or really understanding the crucial things, like especially what we are working on, right? Digital transformation and a lot of the tech. There are a lot of people there's a lot of misconceptions in that world as well, right? So if you don't understand what's like hype versus real and you can't dissect these things, I think you will have a hard time being effective at a catalyst, and you might just chase a vision that might not be real or implementable. But in general, I see the value really in connecting the dots, bringing dispersed parts of the organization together. So for me, for example, in the operating partner role, I really enjoy that role because it offers me the opportunity to do that in so many different places. So first of all, I can do it within our firm, between different departments, the operating team, the investment team, the investor relation team, and really help that information flows and ideas flow and grow in the organization. But then I can also do it within the portfolio companies that I work with and across our portfolio of portfolio companies, which is just super exciting. We invest pretty broadly in many different industries. So our portfolios don't necessarily have, exact blueprints that you can apply from one to the other, but you can definitely share learnings about digital transformation, how to drive change, because that's so core to our investment thesis and something we always want to do. And I've seen that come in, really useful. And a lot of times people are so heads down trying to execute on their role that they forget to look left and right. And I think that's where Catalyst really can come in to help galvanize and tie the knowledge together and spark the creativity in that sense.
Amazing. That sounds like super fun. It's like Catalyst Executive Playground. How does being a Catalyst support you in that?
I think for me, I really can deal with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of ambiguity. And I feel that's, a lot of people struggle with it and feel uncomfortable. So I feel in the roles that I am, that has really served me well. On the other hand, I think the energy that you bring and being able to articulate a vision and then break it down to an executable plan, that has also been really helpful. And of course, a skill that you can always hone and get better at. But that's definitely been something that I applied throughout my career. And I think, bringing the motivation and excitement has been great and, helps to take people along the way. But I guess the learning is as well, right? Like sometimes there's like always a flip side to it. And sometimes you want to go too fast, or you are maybe not patient enough. And that's definitely something that I learned over my career, how to recognize that and how to calibrate as well my change efforts and the push, so to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great pivot into the next question. So I think we can just pick up there. Like, what are some of the challenges that you've had, leading change in organizations, and what helped you overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, I think definitely the being patient and not assume that everyone else is comfortable with change and excited about it. Especially in our case, as we work with the portfolio companies, everyone has a day job that they also need to drive, because usually, the goal is to grow the company organically plus do the transformation. So it is a lot of change for usually like mid-sized organizations at the same time. So just being very conscious about what do people have on their plate? Are they clear about the split between how much time they should spend on the day job versus the transformation? And then really crafting a transformation strategy that combines the two pieces, right? That don't make them too disperse efforts, but really integrates and shows how, the transformation helps advance the everyday, makes the job easier, makes the customers happier, all these things. So.
Okay. I love doing this podcast because the synchronicity that happens in these conversations is insane. I woke up this morning and I was like, I really want to talk with our chief marketing officer about talking about how do we talk about exactly this? Because when we talk about activating catalysts to drive transformation, and I think this happens in a lot of transformation, innovation, whatever you want to call it, initiatives, where they see it as another add-on. And really what I'm hearing you say is like helping people understand that this is the business. Like,
yes.
And so I guess one of the, like, how do you help companies understand that really tactically? And also there is a part where it's like, you're gonna have to stop doing something else. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges that organizations have. It's like, if this is the most strategic thing, and you're looking at what's on the plate of the day job of everyone, you can't just keep dumping. That's not fair. So how do you help organizations do what you just described?
Yeah, I actually think it's a super fascinating topic to discuss, and you get so many different perspectives because I think it's also very motivated by whom do you talk to, what is their job, and whom do they have to report out, right? And what information do they need to satisfy their stakeholders or their, bosses in some way. So I think being conscious about that, because sometimes, right, like some people are incentivized based on the transformational impact they drive. So they want to be able to, separate it and be able to quantify it separately. But like we usually say, like there's no digital transformation without a business transformation, without like being part of the core business, right? These are not separate things. They need to be thought through holistically. So one thing, what we are trying to do usually is identify, right, really clear what are the focus areas, like articulate the end vision very crisp and very colorful in a way so that people can truly understand what is the vision, right? In which markets do we want to excel? Which customers do we want to serve? Where are our strengths? Where do we differentiate versus the competition? And that already helps you to understand maybe other things that are less important for that or can be maybe deprioritized. I think one challenge we have in the mid-market very often is, given you want to double the size of the company very often, there's a lot of foundational work to be done, right? Like upgrading systems, helping people understand more complex organization, how to effectively operate in them. And I'm still working through that challenge, right? Like how you can do all these things at the same time as driving the transformation. But I think here the patient piece comes also in, and be very clear about what's the foundation that you just have to work through, and getting really good at doing that in an accelerated way, to build processes that are repeatable, transparent, scalable. And then I think what we're doing as well is trying to reduce some of the manual busy work by automating and digitizing, right? Like a lot of work is spent on collecting data usually because you want to measure what you're doing and the impact it has. And very often it's manual, which means it's already delayed and not actionable by the time the report lands on your desk. So we're spending a lot of time basically building the analytics foundation for the companies, automating that, making sure that is solid and fungible, and also train people up so that they can help themselves with the analytics and self-serve some intelligence and data points that can inform their everyday. And then we're also looking at very repetitive, mundane tasks that today, especially in the last 2 years, right, there was a huge increase of maturity of the AI and like automation solutions. Think about how we can take that and basically automate it away, right? So that we can basically free up people to do more value at work and do also the work that's strategically more relevant. So that's kind of the playbook I've been following.
So it's so smart. I mean, it's so, when we work with organizations, I would, if there was a betting system on how aligned C-suite executives were on their vision, we could make a lot of money, because I've never sat in a group where, the top 6, whatever C-suite people, if you went around the room and could articulate the vision, could do it. And it's just like, it's the core, to your point, it helps with the prioritization and the deprioritization. I love where you ended too, because it's a really great filter to think about, okay, there's a lot to do. Let's just acknowledge that. But maybe what we prioritize are first the places that are going to increase capacity. So there might be a crunch in terms of more work right now for IT or whomever, but with a goal to getting to some really demonstrable capacity increases for the system as soon as possible. Which I'll pivot to also talking about burnout and your patients. Like, how do you stay patient through all of that? I mean, that's not a core skill for most catalysts.
Yeah, I think that's still a work in progress, but I think being like more empathic is helpful, right? Really put yourself in the shoes of the other, like the people that are going through the change with you or that you want to take along, and just understanding why are they not ready to just get fully behind your vision and hit the gas pedal. So I think that has been an important piece, and just having the dialogue. And basically, I think for me, it has been important to align just also with my leadership and the board of the company what is the speed we want to go get at, right? Because private equity itself is a very impatient industry, and time is value, right? Like you buy a company and you want to start delivering value to your investors, and it's usually not a wait and see, right? Like approach. So I think they're like just with the experience going through transformation, I also sometimes go back to our leadership in the board and say, like, listen, here slower might actually be faster, and we need to give the company time to digest and recover also from the deal process, which can be very strenuous for management and very distracting. Let them get back to just into the core business, let them recharge a bit, and then let's start our value creation planning, and then really being aligned on the must achieves and the things that are non-negotiable in terms of timeline, where you have to push, versus the things where you have a bit more flexibility, and you can calibrate a bit more on the timeline. And I think just being, for me personally, being very clear on what the expectations are, that helps me to adjust my approach. And, I kind of filter it up and I get it from top down, bottom up, and I'm trying to galvanize everything into like one workable and sustainable change strategy.
So good. So good. The slower might be faster, and the clarity on what is the speed we need to work on, I think is really smart. And it's not a conversation that enough organizations have. I remember multiple times I've just like done timelines with just scheduling the meetings for the vendors or the partners, or, and it's like that itself dictates a timeline that other people might not be comfortable with. Any other challenges that you want to share with us?
Well, I think one other element that I got very aware of, especially working in the digital world where something new really pops up, every day pretty much. It's also being very conscious about transformation. It's really not about chasing every new idea, right? It's about figuring out what's the right change at the right time for the right problem that fits to the company. So I think that's also just a very important point. I think another challenge is just having enough time to build relationships and trust and make the proper investments into that. I think that's also something I learned as I progressed through my career. Maybe being German didn't help at the beginning there too, right? We're already a lot more fact-based and let's just get down to work. But I think it's really important because, if you put a compelling vision out, I think people get excited and follow you, but then to make it sustainable and keep them engaged and keep them, really like crunch together with you and help you achieve the goals, that really comes when people trust that the you and the change will also create benefits and opportunities for them. So investing in that is important, and also understanding you can't do it alone, and building allies and trusted people that can help you multiply your your purview basically, and just get more done. I think that's also really important. And sometimes catalysts are so focused on the vision and just go that you might forget that, and not spend enough time building these relationships, but also not enough time explaining your vision, which to us it's always super clear, like why is that not obvious to everyone? But it is not, right? Like a lot of times, maybe we're also confusing to people. They don't understand how we came up with ideas. They haven't connected the same dots that we have. They might have different hypotheses and experiences. So I think also learning to be explicit about articulating your vision, visualizing it, right? Like even just write it down or create a picture that summarizes it. It's usually much harder than you think, but it actually really helps. And I'm actually very much also a fan of writing more memos versus PowerPoints, because I think it forces you to just really be crisp and articulate the full thought, versus in PowerPoint, you can just have some bullet points and fill in the blanks. But I think all of us who drove a lot of change know that can be dangerous, and you have to give the same presentation or the same pre-read to 5 people, and they all come back with a completely different interpretation of what you suggested. So yeah.
That's a really strong insight. And I think, so you've just like outlined most of our class, which is hilarious. You're hitting on all of the core skills that we think that catalysts need to do. And I love actually the dual combination of the memo where there's like a whole complete thought along with the visualization, because it's like that 1-2 piece is really powerful. But I want to go back to, okay, so you're like, the relationship, I came in from Germany wanting to just get down to business and blah, blah, blah. And then I had to slow down and be like, I actually have to develop the relationships. It sounds like there was an intentional pivot there. So how do you do that today? And from my own experience, how do you communicate, or do you, to other senior leaders about how much time that takes? Because it's what makes Catalyst so successful. If we're successful, it's because we've done exactly that. But people totally underestimate how many different people / how many different conversations with those people you have to have. So tell me about that process that you go through.
Yeah, I think for me, I draw a lot of energy from, just learning about different parts of the organization or learning from different people. And I really enjoy it. So I think I've always done it implicitly, but I really pivoted to be a bit more explicit. I feel in today's world, it's almost a bit harder because so much is virtual and everyone is so overburdened with meetings on the calendar that sometimes it feels also almost disrespectful to ask someone, hey, can we spend half an hour just to catch up, right? No other intention. And I know it for myself, like sometimes that can fill up your calendar already to a point that it's not sustainable. So yeah, so I think that's still something I'm working through. I think I'm trying to go to certain, big industry events, or if there are company outings, I usually try to participate in them, spend time, be in the office, be available when I'm in the office. Try to, I think in some mentor of mine said, never have a meal alone, right? Try to meet people for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I'm trying to do that as much as I can when I'm on my travels. And yeah, I think if you're planning a change effort, you actually have the permission to be more explicit about it. And, it won't just be networking calls that you're setting up, but you can always use them to bounce off your vision, your hypotheses, your plans, and get feedback from, your counterpart. And I do think people appreciate if they get looped in early on, even if it's just an adjacent project that maybe at first glance doesn't impact the function, but usually it always does at the end because there are always interfaces across the organization. And then sometimes, the way big companies are structured, there isn't always an incentive to share and to cross-pollinate because of P&L lines and, kind of how resources are allocated and so on. I think there it's also important to invest in your network, right? Like give first and then ask for something. Try to be helpful, try to provide value to them. And honestly, at PwC, it was so fun once, I've also been there for a long time, right? Like almost, I think, 8 years. And I came through an acquisition, then I worked with Strategy and which came through the Boost acquisition. So I, per definition, already worked for kind of 3 different companies within the company, then started in Germany, came to the US. But it was so fun at the end when it felt like you could just pull the different threads across the organization and really pull a great offering and a great perspective for a client together that really leverages the best of the firm. And I think people recognize that, especially with the global clients, it also can help you to show well in a project in the US and then sell another project somewhere else. But it might need a bit of patience and deliberate effort to get this flywheel in motion.
I love your intentionality. And when we teach the class, and it's in the book too, one of the things we talk about as you're going through the change process, rather than sort of traditional change management, you start off with a listening tour and you're listening, but this is all about connecting with people or listening to the system. And then you move into a co-creation where you're collectively, like you said, bringing people into the process, and then feedback tour. And then you're like just getting through the resistors, like, are there any major blockers that are going to stop this? But I don't know that I had connected the dots as concretely as being intentional with like where you are in the phase and the type of engagement that you're doing, because there is also the pre-phase before you even do the change thing, which is doing the things that you're like, I'm really intentional. I'm never going to have a meal alone. I'm going to go into the office and just develop that trust and connectivity, which I think is really important. So thank you for that clarity for me about like the different types of engagement, intentional throughout the change process. All right, as we wrap up, going to our favorite question, I'd love to hear about one of your favorite catalysts, someone who inspires you, past or present, and why do they stand out to you?
Yeah, so I was recently driving and I listen to audiobooks or podcasts pretty frequently, very often yours. So that's always a great time spent in the car. But I was listening to one that described Indra Nui's journey at Pepsi. And just as I was listening, I was like, wow, this seems to be spot on for like a catalyst leader. And I just found it very inspiring, right? Like how she transformed the organization, how she emphasized more healthier and sustainable products. The way I heard about her change, learned about her change efforts, it also seemed very, employee focused or consensus focused. And she managed to take both employees and investors along the journey, which definitely was a risky one, right? Especially lots of people didn't see it or didn't believe in it. And it was a bold move to move into less sugary and less more healthy products. So I thought that was a very fascinating story. And she did all that as one of the few women executives at that, Fortune 500 echelon as well. So I thought that was a really great change effort that's worth studying and understanding more.
Thank you so much. No one has brought her up yet, and she's on my list too for all of the same reasons, like her authentic leadership. She talked before the pandemic about burnout and having some kind of healthy balance and creating like actual sustainable organizations, which is my purpose in life. So thank you for bringing her in. That's lovely.
Of course.
Juliane, thank you so much for this great conversation. It was so fun to go a little bit deeper with you on all of this.
Thanks, Shannon. I'm glad we had the opportunity, and I always learn a lot talking to you too.
Awesome. I'll see you in May. To our listening audience, thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about how to create bold, powerful change in the world, be sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burnout, or go to our website at catalystconstellations.com. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, please take 10 seconds to rate it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way. Thanks again.